Good morning. It's Nate Charles back again. It's August 20th, 2025, back with another thought of the day. Today's thought of the day is about the Trump administration's recent announcement that Trump plans to release an executive order prohibiting the use of mail-in ballots and electronic voting machines. Um, the Republican Party has pretty consistently framed these arguments as necessary, framed these policy proposals as necessary for increasing election security. However, um, there has never been any credible evidence of any voter fraud stemming from the use of mail-in ballots or electronic voting machines that has affected the outcome of a national election. There's just simply none. And by all means, if you think you've got some, post a comment below with a link to your sources, because I would if you think that I can be proven wrong here, please do. I want to have a meaningful and intelligent argument about the credibility of that evidence. I have not been able to find any. Now, there have been localized instances of voter fraud involving mail-in ballots, and those have been caught. They've been remedied by throwing out the tainted ballots. There have also been some limited reports of tampering with electronic voting machines. However, those have all been thoroughly investigated, and the results of those elections were upheld using hand counts of the votes. So the idea that mail-in ballots or electronic voting machines pose a significant threat to the outcome of elections, a threat to the integrity of those elections, is unsupported by any credible evidence. Now, there's been quite a few questions as to whether Donald Trump has the power to do what he's planning on doing, and the short answer is no. The Elections Clause of the U.S. Constitution gives states the right to establish the time, place, and method for conducting elections in each state. However, that same clause also gives the federal Congress, the U.S. Congress, the ability to amend those regulations through legislation. So, in one sense, the Constitution gives power to the states and then it almost immediately takes some of it back. The bottom line is the states retain the authority to establish where, when, and how elections are going to be conducted to a certain degree. But the federal Congress has, in a number of instances, about a half a dozen times over the course of the history of the United States, used its legislative authority under that same elections clause of the U.S. Constitution to amend those regulations to make them more fair and to standardize certain procedures. Under no circumstances whatsoever does the President of the United States have the authority to issue an executive order changing the time, place, or method of elections in the United States. He doesn't have that authority whatsoever. This isn't even a close legal issue. He does not have the authority to do this. The more interesting question here is why he is doing it. Now, again, I've already addressed the fact that election security isn't really a legitimate claim. So it's not really about election security because there's no data to back that up. So, what are the other possible explanations? One is that he is trying to, and this has been the frequent refrain of the Democratic Party, he is just trying to minimize people's right to vote. He is trying to make it more difficult for people to vote. He's trying to suppress voter turnout, and he's especially trying to make it more difficult for people to vote if they are poor and they don't have the resources to either take time away from work to go vote, or they don't necessarily have the transportation to get to a physical polling place. Those now that issue tends to affect both Republicans and Democrats, right? There are poor Republicans and there are poor Democrats. Anybody who has limited access to a physical polling place is going to be less likely to vote if they restrain the use of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots. There is an election access argument. There's a voter turnout argument, a voter turnout theory as to why President Trump is attempting to do what he's doing here. But it's not entirely clear that is his motivation, because again, that could affect Republicans almost as much as it could affect Democrats. Now, I think there's some potent counter arguments to that. There are a lot of Democrats who will say, well, it's going to disproportionately affect urban populations, which tend to vote Democratic, and there might be some data to support that. If you have access to any of that data, again, would love it if you throw some comments to some of your evidence in the comments below, because again, I want this to be an informed discussion, uh, and and I could be wrong. Another, I think, far more interesting theory is one that was posed by a legal election law scholar by the name of Richard L. Hazen, and it's that Trump is um, using these changes in election law, these proposed changes in election law, to lay tinder for another conflagration after the next election. It seems to be pretty clear that Donald Trump's um, philosophy as president is not to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. That is not his goal at all. In fact, it's not even close. It seems to me pretty clear that Donald Trump's presidency is an 8-year experiment in seeing how much he can get away with. Um, and for that reason, I think that Richard L. Hazen's theory might have some legitimacy. He thinks that what Donald Trump is potentially trying to do is preemptively delegitimize the results of future elections. What I mean by that is there are some theories that if we radically change the way that we conduct elections in the United States, which are overwhelmingly done these days using mail-in ballots and electronic voting machines, that it would cause people to question the results of that election inherently, you know, regardless of who is necessarily the winner. I, we have already seen Donald Trump previously lay the groundwork for arguments that the election was rigged when he thinks he might lose. Right? Anytime he's doing poorly in the polls, anytime that he's being challenged on the substance of his policies, he starts saying, "Oh well, we know that this has been a witch hunt. We know that this is rigged. Uh, I don't even need to collect up the evidence. The YouTube is full of videos of Donald Trump claiming that that elections have been rigged. Um, it is possible, according to Mr. Hazen, that is what he is doing here. That he is trying to delegitimize the results of the next elections so that he can cast doubt on the results of those elections and thereby maintain some semblance of power through some sort of emergency authority or possibly even inspire another insurrection like the one that took place on January 6th, 2021. I think that's a very interesting theory. It's very difficult to crawl inside somebody's head, so it's difficult to know what Donald Trump's actual intent is. And frankly, I think another possibility is that Donald Trump is just so ill-informed about his duties under the Constitution and about the elections clause of the U.S. Constitution and about federalism generally that he just doesn't know what he's doing. That is another possibility as well. Again, I can't rule out the possibility of him trying to affect public perception of a future election, but I also can't rule out the possibility that he's just too dumb to know what he's doing. It's very difficult to say. Anyway, this has been such an interesting topic for me to research that I think I might end up following up this recording with with a written Substack article, a written blog post with inline citations and links to all the resources that I found on this because I think this is an incredibly important topic and I think it's very interesting. I had a lot of fun researching this one. But again, if you are aware of any resources that tend to uh, dispute what I've claimed in this, by all means, post those in the comments. If you got thoughts on this, please post those in the comments. If you have any thoughts on this issue, please post those in the comments as well. I want this to be a discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Uh, on behalf of Charles International Law, we appreciate your attention and your opportunity to engage with us and the opportunity to engage with you on these important topics to make our country better together. Thank you so much. Have a great day.